Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. I don't really think about safety when I go on dating apps anymore. It's just part of life at this point. Matching, scrolling, quick chats, that fake excitement that lasts a few minutes before fading. So when I matched with this guy, it didn't feel like anything special. He looked normal. Not like model normal. Just someone you'd expect to see at a bus stop or in a corner shop grabbing a drink. That kind of forgettable face that somehow makes you feel comfortable. We started talking late at night, mostly out of boredom. He asked to FaceTime pretty early on, which threw me off, but I went with it. Every call was the same. Dim room, barely any light except for this cold glow coming from somewhere off-screen. I could only ever see his face and a slanted bit of wall behind him. It looked almost colorless, like everything in the background had been drained out. No decorations, nothing hanging up, not even a door. Just him in that weird room. I tried to make jokes about it once, asking if he lived in a cave or something, but he brushed it off, and I stopped mentioning it. After a while it just became part of how I saw him. Dim room, grainy face, frozen smile. He never turned his camera around or moved from that spot. It was like that room was the only place he ever existed. Weeks passed, and everything stayed stuck in that same rhythm. FaceTime at night, always him in that room. He never asked to meet, which was strange because most guys get weirdly pushy or impatient. But he just waited, almost like he knew I'd eventually suggest it myself. And I did. He sent me his address. It wasn't too far. A narrow street behind a row of quiet flats, the kind of place that feels like everyone keeps their curtains closed even in daylight. When I got there, the building looked completely normal. White walls, generic doorbells, bland hallways smell like cleaning spray and dust. Nothing like that dark backdrop I'd seen on every call. He opened the door before I even knocked properly, like he had been standing right behind it. He looked exactly the same as on screen, but something about seeing him in person felt off, almost delayed, like I was seeing him in real time for the first time, and the version on FaceTime had been some sort of echo. I stepped inside slowly. Bright hallway, warm-colored walls, pictures hung neatly, a coat rack, a plant by the door. Normal. There was no dark room. No gloomy corner where he usually sat. I scanned every doorway I could see, trying to match just one angle to those calls. Nothing matched. He walked ahead, telling me to put my shoes by the wall. I moved to do it, and that's when I saw it. The mirror. It was positioned at the end of the hallway, tall, plain frame, nothing special. But the reflection didn't match what I was looking at. In the mirror, the hallway didn't exist. Instead, I could see that same colorless room from the calls, the dead background, the drained walls, that weird space where nothing lived. For a second, I'd assumed it was just the angle, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. I turned to look behind me, expecting to see the hallway, the plant, the coat rack. But when I looked directly, everything was still normal. Soft lighting, warm walls. When I looked back at the mirror, the plant was gone. The coat rack was gone. The hallway wasn't there. And I saw him in the reflection, standing in that empty gray room, facing the mirror like he had been there the whole time. But he wasn't facing me. In the reflection, he was standing behind me. My body froze. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe right. I kept my eyes locked on the mirror. In real life, he was ahead of me, walking toward the kitchen. But in the reflection, he was behind me, standing perfectly still, head tilted slightly like he was waiting for me to notice him. I didn't turn around. I backed up slowly, moving closer to the door without breaking eye contact with that reflection. My heartbeat felt loud. I could hear blood in my ears. Every tiny movement felt like it would trigger something. In the mirror, he took a step. Just one. Directly toward me. But in the real hallway, he was still ahead. rummaging through something like he didn't even notice I wasn't following. The reflection version of him got closer, and even though I couldn't hear anything, I could feel the pressure of something approaching me. Like cold air wrapping around my back. My fingers touched the door handle. In the mirror, the handle wasn't there. Only that blank room. And him. I don't remember unlocking the door. I just remember being outside, breathing strangely, like my lungs didn't know how to work. When I looked up at the window from the street, I could see movement. Not him exactly, just a shifting shadow in a dull room that didn't exist in the layout of the building. That night, he FaceTimed me again. I didn't answer. The call showed the same dark room as always. But for the first time, there was no movement. Just the room, completely empty. And the mirror, just barely visible at the back, facing the camera. Most people say they can spot AI faces by now. The weird skin texture, the too perfect symmetry, the backgrounds that look slightly wrong. I always thought I was decent at it too, like I could point at a picture and say that's not a real person. But then I matched with her. Her photos looked like they'd been generated on some high-end app. Everything about her face was soft but unnaturally clean, no pores, no uneven lighting, eyes too glossy. But she had this way of typing that made me forget about that. She didn't send short replies like most people. She described things she was doing, random things she noticed around her, stupid thoughts she had at 3 in the morning. None of it felt robotic. It felt like she was reaching through the screen and demanding to be real. The longer we talked, the less I cared about the photos. I started convincing myself that she just used those AI-style filters people love. I even laughed about it in my head, like I was smarter than the average Tinder user, like I had seen through it while still enjoying it. We talked for a week straight. It got to a point where I'd check my phone before anything else, like I was waiting for her to pull me back in. She chose the place to meet. Not a restaurant or anything romantic. Just a regular shopping center that had a big seating area on the top floor near some bubble tea place. It was the most normal location ever, like she purposely picked somewhere public to feel casual. I got there early. I kept going back to her profile, scrolling through her pictures. Each one had that same glossy smoothness, like her face had been vacuum sealed. Even the backgrounds looked too soft, with blurred lights that didn't match any real camera lens I'd seen. Then she walked in. Straight away, I felt my brain glitch. She looked exactly like the pictures, but at the same time she didn't. Her skin had real texture. Her hair moved when she walked. Her eyes darted around like an actual person taking in a space. It shouldn't have been a big deal, but something about seeing her alive scared me more than if she hadn't shown up at all. She sat down across from me, smiling like she already knew what I was thinking. As we talked, I kept staring at her face, waiting to find the flaw that proved she wasn't AI. I noticed tiny things, like when she moved her mouth to drink, the corner of her lip stuck slightly before following. When she pushed her hair back, a strand got caught on her ring, and she had to untangle it. Those details made her real, and for a moment I relaxed. It was only when I looked away for a second that everything changed. I turned to grab my drink, and in that short motion, her face wasn't the same. It wasn't a big change, just a shift. Her nose looked a bit sharper. Her cheeks slightly more defined. I blinked hard and looked again. Everything was normal. She tilted her head and laughed at something, like nothing was wrong. I told myself I was imagining it. I kept looking directly at her, focusing on every detail like I was studying a painting. She stood up to throw something away. I glanced to the side subconsciously, just to check my phone screen lighting up. When I looked back, her jawline was a little longer. Not dramatically. Just enough for my brain to hesitate before recognizing her. She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes properly, like the face was still loading a human expression. As long as I stared straight at her, she stayed stable. But the second my attention slipped, even just to blink or look at someone walking past, her features would return slightly altered. Always subtle. Always just enough to plant doubt. I started testing it without letting her notice. I'd glance at a shop window reflection, then snap my eyes back to her. Each time her face came back slightly different. Smaller mouth. Softer chin. Eyes a fraction too round. It was like I was looking at different versions of her, each one more polished and artificial than the last. She leaned forward after a while, resting her chin on her hand. Her eyes watched me like she was waiting for something. I realized she wasn't speaking anymore. She had stopped asking questions. She was just watching. And every time I broke eye contact, her face reset into a new version, like she was trying on different identities, testing which one I'd accept without question. There was a moment when I looked down at my drink lid and back up again, and her face was completely wrong. Too smooth. Plastic-like. The color in her skin was muted, almost flat. She blinked slowly, and for a second I saw a flicker beneath the surface, like something adjusting itself, blending pixels into something that resembled a person. The shopping center around us felt too bright all of a sudden, too loud. But when I looked around properly, the people nearby didn't look like real people anymore. Their faces blurred slightly whenever I tried to focus. I couldn't tell if it was panic or something changing around me. She tilted her head like she could see the exact moment it clicked for me. That small awareness in her eyes made my stomach twist. I looked away on purpose, on instinct, toward the escalator. When I turned back, her face had changed again. Sharper. More symmetrical. Perfect in a way that hurt to look at. She raised her hand slowly toward her cheek, almost like she was adjusting an invisible setting. The skin there rippled softer for a moment, like a filter being smoothed out in real time. My chest tightened. She wasn't pretending to be real. She was actively editing herself every second I wasn't looking. I stood up too quickly. The chair legs dragged loudly against the floor. People turned to look, but their faces distorted slightly like camera glitches, flickering between normal and too perfect. For a moment I wasn't sure if anyone around me had ever been real to begin with. I didn't say anything to her. I just walked away fast, not running but moving too urgently to seem casual. I could feel her eyes on me the whole time. I didn't dare look back. Not because I was scared of her chasing me, but because I knew if I looked away and then back, her face wouldn't be the same again. When I finally reached the exit doors and pushed outside into the colder air, I paused just long enough to glance at my phone screen reflection. My own face blinked back at me. For half a second, it didn't look like mine. I didn't really plan to go out that night. I was scrolling out of boredom, not even expecting to match with anyone decent. That's when I saw her profile. Her photos looked simple, nothing flashy. Dim lighting, wine glass in hand, a messy living room in the background. She didn't look filtered or forced like most people who try too hard. Her bio just said she liked quiet nights and staying in rather than going out. It felt harmless. The way she messaged matched that vibe too. Calm, almost too calm. She suggested meeting at her place instead of doing something public. Normally that would have set off alarms in my head, but the way she worded it made it sound like it was no big deal. She sent me the address without hesitation. When I checked it on maps, it looked like one of those tidy rental flats people use for weekend trips. Clean, modern, lots of neutral colors. It even had the little balcony with soft lights in the listing photos. She said she'd have wine ready by the time I got there. When I arrived, everything looked exactly like the location photo she sent. Warm lights were glowing through the curtains. The balcony light was on, flickering a bit like a weak bulb. I buzzed the flat door, but before it even finished ringing, someone inside opened it manually like they'd been waiting just a few steps away. She stood there wearing a soft sweater, barefoot, holding a glass of wine like she had already been halfway through it. It was strange how casual everything felt. No makeup-heavy look, no awkward greeting, just a quiet wave inside like she lived there. Or at least like she belonged there. The place was tidy, but in a staged way. Like no one actually lived there full-time. Pillows placed perfectly, blankets folded too neatly, surfaces free of personal stuff. There were wine glasses set out on the table, 2 of them, already filled. She handed me one like she had done this before, almost like it was routine. We talked for a bit while sitting on the sofa. She never gave too many details about herself, but somehow always made me talk more. I realized quickly that I didn't actually know anything about her beyond the images and a few light messages. But every time I started to wonder about it, she'd pour more wine or ask something distracting. It was easy to let the hours pass. At some point, I must have dozed off. The wine made my head heavy and the room felt too still. There was no sound coming from outside. No cars, no hallway noise. I remember lying there with that weird buzzing in my ears, like silence at a pulse. I don't remember falling asleep at all. When I woke up, the living room was washed in morning light. Bright, too bright compared to how it felt last night. I was on the sofa with a blanket over me. The wine glasses were still sitting on the table, but hers was empty this time, placed exactly in the center like it had been repositioned. She wasn't there. The balcony door was slightly open like there had been movement. I assumed she had gone out early to grab something or maybe was still around getting ready. The bathroom door was open and the towels inside were untouched and folded perfectly. I noticed then that there were no personal belongings anywhere. No shoes near the door, no bag on a chair, nothing in the kitchen besides untouched wine bottles. It didn't feel like someone had left temporarily. It felt like no one had been there at all. I called out for her casually but stopped halfway through. The air inside the flat felt wrong, like sound wasn't supposed to exist there anymore. My head felt too clear all of a sudden. I grabbed my jacket, glanced around once more and walked out slowly, trying not to think too hard about how nothing in that place looked used except for the glasses. The hallway outside looked different in the morning, less welcoming. The lights were colder. The air felt sharp, like the building was empty except for me. I started walking toward the front door when I heard someone stomping up the stairs in a hurry. A heavy kind of movement, not casual at all. Then I heard keys rattling. A man appeared, holding a folder in one hand and a cleaning kit bag in the other. He looked annoyed like someone who had been called out too early. He saw me coming from the flat and immediately stopped. His eyes went straight to the key that was still in the lock behind me. He stared at it like something was wrong. He asked what I was doing there. I told him I had just stayed the night. His expression changed instantly. Not confusion, anger. He said the place wasn't due to have anyone in it until Monday. He said bookings were locked until then, and no access codes had been given out. I stepped back towards the flat door, suddenly unsure I had even been in the right building. He pushed past me and opened the door using a different set of keys. The flat inside didn't look like it did last night. The blanket I had slept under was folded. The wine glasses were gone. The sofa cushions were positioned perfectly again, like no one had sat on them. Even the balcony door was locked shut. He walked around like he was checking for a break-in. I stood in the doorway frozen. I tried to explain again, but the words didn't feel believable, even to me. I pointed to the balcony, to where we had sat, to where the glasses had been. Nothing was there. The man pulled out a printed list from his folder. He ran his finger down it like he was making sure. He said the flat had been empty all week, waiting for the next renter. He said no woman lived there. No one named what she had told me even existed in their system. I looked at the sofa where I had woken up. It looked untouched, like the cushion hadn't even been pressed down by any weight. The room looked like it had been reset, like a scene rewound to its blank version. The man asked me again how I got inside. I stared at the door buzzer, trying to remember if I had actually heard it unlock, or if she had just opened it without noise. I tried to picture her standing there in that sweater, holding that glass. For a moment, my brain couldn't place her face clearly anymore. Every attempt to remember her made the image slide away slightly, like trying to put pressure on water. I stepped back into the hallway. The morning light felt colder out there. The flat door closed behind me, and the sound echoed too long. I walked away slowly, not looking back until I reached the street. The balcony light was still flickering faintly in the daylight. It flickered twice, then stopped completely. Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far, and if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories. I wasn't even looking for anything serious when I matched with him. I was scrolling in that mindless way where you barely even read bios, just swiping because your brain wants something to focus on. His profile stopped me though. His photos weren't staged like everyone else's. No gym mirror shots or fake travel poses. Just simple ones. Him in a hoodie sitting by a lake, blurry pic of him, laughing with his hand half over the camera like someone caught him off guard. It made him look real, not curated. His messages had that laid-back tone that made it easy to keep talking without forcing anything. He didn't reply instantly like he was obsessed, but he never disappeared either. It felt balanced in a way that made me feel weirdly comfortable. We talked for 5 days straight. Nothing deep, no love bombing, just normal small stuff that slowly started to feel familiar. He joked about how late he stayed up scrolling. He mentioned missing buses because he was half awake in the mornings. Silly details, but they made him feel like someone I could actually picture living somewhere out there. Then, right in the middle of us talking about something random, I don't even remember what it was, his typing bubble stopped. I waited a few minutes thinking he'd pick it back up. Then it became an hour. Then half a day. I typed something else just to see if he'd respond. Message delivered. No reply. I went through the usual thoughts. Maybe he lost interest. Maybe he dropped his phone in a sink or something dumb like that. People vanish online. It happens. 3 days passed. Silence. His chat stayed sitting at the top of my inbox like a paused scene. His profile was still active too, with a green online dot showing once or twice, which made it worse. I convinced myself I didn't care, but I kept checking anyway without meaning to. There was something too abrupt about the way he left mid-sentence that made it stick in my head. Then, on the third night, my feed on another app showed a tagged post with his photo. It was the picture of him by the lake, the exact one from his profile. At first, I thought it was a birthday thing or maybe a throwback. People tag each other for anything. I clicked it without thinking too deeply. I expected something light. Instead, I was staring at a photo of him surrounded by candles and flowers arranged on that same lakeside spot. The caption underneath was a memorial. I read it 3 times before it sank in. The post was from his friend's account, talking about how he passed away that week. The date written was 8 days ago. 8 days. That meant he had been dead before our last chat, before he even stopped typing. My stomach hollowed out. I went back to our messages immediately, scrolling up and checking the timestamps. Our last conversation was 5 days ago. 5 days. But according to the post, he wasn't alive then. I clicked his Tinder profile quickly. Still active. Still showing that online indicator. The little green dot pulsing like he was right there, idling casually like he always did. I went deeper because my brain refused to accept it. I clicked the tagged memorial account again and scrolled through the comments. People were sharing memories of him. Screenshots. One person mentioned how they had all gathered at the lake exactly a week ago for the candles. There were photos of that night. People standing in a circle holding lights. In every picture, the ground looked wet like it had rained. His photo was propped up against a stone, with his hoodie laid out under it. I recognized that hoodie. He was wearing it in the last photo he had sent me. I checked the send time on that photo. It was 4 days ago. 4. I started thinking maybe it was some kind of old account that someone else was using. Or maybe it was a mix-up, and there were two people who just looked similar. Desperate logic, but something didn't line up. Even if someone had access to his phone and decided to casually chat with strangers like nothing happened, why would they keep up a normal conversation? Why would they talk about missing buses and scrolling late into the night? The part that messed with my head the most wasn't even the fact he responded after his supposed death. It was how normal everything felt. There were no spooky counts of days, no dramatic message about disappearing. He just stopped mid-sentence like someone walking out of a room casually, like he had something else to do. I stared at his profile picture again. This time I noticed the lighting looked slightly off. Like the background blur behind him was a little too soft. I stared at his eyes in the image for too long. They looked captured, not posed. But there was something about them. The more I looked, the more I couldn't tell if it was a still frame from a real moment or something preserved after everything else had already stopped. I checked his account one more time before closing the app. Still online. Still active. I waited to see if the dot would turn off. It didn't. Later that night, at a random hour, I opened the app again, even though I had told myself I wouldn't. His profile was gone. Not unmatched, not deleted from the chat. Fully gone. Like the system itself removed it. The chat window still showed our messages, but his name had turned into a blank tag with no profile picture. Just a gray shape where his face had been. I scrolled up to where it ended. The last thing he sent was half a sentence. It didn't end naturally. It just cut off mid-thought. I stared at it until my screen dimmed. Then I locked my phone quietly like I didn't want to wake something. I didn't think much about the background of a date. When you meet someone from Tinder, your mind is too busy trying to look normal, making sure your voice doesn't sound weird, and checking you don't have food on your face. So I never really paid attention to the people sitting around me, until it became impossible to ignore. The first time it happened, I was at a coffee place with someone I matched with after a boring night of swiping. I wasn't super into her, but she was easy to talk to, and the caffeine gave the whole thing a fake sense of comfort. Halfway through, while she was going on about her dog, I felt that thing people feel when someone is behind them. Not dramatic, just that awareness. I glanced at the window reflection and saw someone sitting directly behind me wearing a red hoodie, head down, hood up. Thought nothing of it. Everyone wears hoodies. Everyone stares at their phones. The date ended, nothing special. I walked away without thinking back on it. The next one was 3 days later at a burger place. Different girl, different side of town. As I sat down with her, I caught sight of someone settling into the booth behind me through the glass divider. Same red hoodie. Hood up again. Face hard to see. I thought I was being paranoid, like maybe it was just a popular brand, or I was subconsciously noticing red Mao. But the weird part was how still they were. Not scrolling, not eating, just sitting with their head tilted slightly toward my direction. My date asked if I wanted to go somewhere quieter. I jumped at the idea. The moment I stood and looked back, the booth was empty. Like no one had been there. I didn't mention it. There's no smooth way to say, hey, did you see the hoodie ghost guy behind me? A week passed, and I ended up matching with someone new. She was different. More chill, less filtered energy. She picked a street food spot near the river. It was busy, loud, people everywhere. Felt safe. I sat with my back against the railing, thinking that for once I'd be able to see everything without someone sitting directly behind me. She arrived smiling, holding a takeaway tray, and as she sat down, I caught movement to the side. Someone in a red hoodie sat down just one bench behind us, like they had been waiting for the exact moment we sat to choose their seat. Hood up. Face hidden. No food in front of them. just sitting. This time, my chest went tight. I tried to casually check again, pretending to tie my shoe so I could angle myself. They didn't look away. They didn't even pretend to be on their phone. They were facing me, their heads slightly tilted like before. I suddenly felt the urge to keep my face still in case any reaction gave something away. My date was talking about something. I barely heard it. Then she mentioned something that made my stomach drop without her even realizing what she had just said. She said she felt safer meeting people knowing she had a friend nearby keeping an eye on her. She said her friend always shows up somewhere in the area on her dates, just in case anything went weird. My first reaction was understanding. People get cautious online. But then my brain lined up every detail. The same person, the same hoodie, always behind me, always watching me, not her, facing me with their attention fixed like I was the one being measured. I asked where her friend was out of curiosity. I tried to hide. She gestured around casually, like she didn't even know for sure, but assumed they were somewhere close. She said he wears a red hoodie a lot, like it was just some random detail. She laughed about it, like it was a fun inside joke between them. My hands felt heavier suddenly. I glanced behind her. The hoodie figure wasn't sitting anymore. They were standing, a few steps back, facing us directly, unmoving. Everyone else around was busy, walking, talking, eating. But that one figure just stood still, aligning themselves with my line of sight. If I tilted my head, they adjusted their stance slightly. Not towards her, towards me. I felt my throat go dry and I said something about needing a drink from one of the stalls just to stand up. She nodded, casually scrolling her phone while I walked away. As I moved, I kept expecting the hoodie person to turn toward her or at least change focus. But they didn't. I walked toward the crowd. I didn't grab anything. I just merged into the moving people and glanced back only once. The red hoodie was no longer only watching me from a distance. They had moved to stand directly where I had been sitting, like filling the exact space I had left behind. My date was still talking to herself over her phone, unaware that someone else had taken my spot completely, their head tilted down toward her like they were studying her face. She didn't react, didn't look up, didn't flinch. I kept walking and didn't go back to the table. I waited near the outer stalls pretending to scroll my phone, heart racing in that sick, slow way where you feel your body reacting before your mind does. I watched from a distance. She eventually looked up and around, confused. She scanned the crowd for me, but the red hoodie didn't move. They kept their position on the bench. From where I stood, I saw her tilt her head slightly, the same tilt I had noticed before. She was looking at them like she recognized them. Like they weren't a stranger to her at all. She got up slowly and walked toward the hoodie. She didn't look scared. She looked calm, like they had just done exactly what they were supposed to do. The hoodie figure finally moved their head, but instead of focusing on her, they turned it to face me through the moving crowd. Even from that distance, I felt it land on me like weight. I turned and walked until I couldn't see the river anymore. I deleted the chat before she could message. I didn't block her. I just erased the entire thread like it never happened. But sometimes when I'm out, I catch myself scanning crowds without meaning to, looking for a flash of red. Not for her. For whoever was never really watching her in the first place. I wasn't even dressed properly for it. I threw on something casual because I expected it to be like every other half-hearted Tinder meetup. Basic small talk, maybe a drink, then an awkward "this was fun," before going home and pretending I wasn't disappointed. He seemed different though. Not in a romantic way, just consistent. He replied at normal times, never used cringe lines, sent voice notes that sounded calm and steady. There was something stable about him that made me trust meeting at his place. He sent the address like it was a normal thing, said he'd leave the door unlocked because he was finishing something in the kitchen. It didn't sound sketchy at the time, just sounded casual, like someone used to having people over. I walked through a narrow street that led to a quiet block of older apartments, the type that had chipped paint on the railings and echoey stairwells. The address matched the door number perfectly. There was no sign of anyone waiting, but the door was slightly pushed open, just how he said it would be. I pushed it further with my hand and stepped inside. Straight away, something felt off. The air inside had that untouched smell, like a place sealed up for too long. The kind of stale cold that doesn't come from an open window, but from nothing existing there to create warmth. The hallway had no shoes, no coats, not even dust marks from things once being there. The floorboards looked too clean, like freshly wiped but not lived on. I called out his name in the most casual way I could manage, expecting a voice from the kitchen or somewhere deeper inside. Nothing came back. Just a hollow echo of my own voice bouncing off walls that should have had something to absorb sound, but didn't. I moved through the hallway. The kitchen door was open. The lights were working, but the room was completely empty. No appliances, no counters, just a bare shell. Exposed wall where tiles once were. Cabinet outline stains. A sink pipe sticking up with no sink attached. The floor had marks where a fridge had once stood, but there was nothing there now. Not even dust, like everything had been ripped out and cleaned over carefully. My heartbeat picked up. I walked into what should have been the living room. Again, emptiness. No furniture. No marks where furniture had scraped the floor. Just blank space. The walls were stripped, even the curtain rail was gone, leaving only screw holes. A place like that doesn't look abandoned. It looks like it's waiting to be renovated after everything has been demolished. I checked the corner where he said his sofa was. Nothing. I didn't even know why I kept checking specific spots, like maybe I'd missed something huge. But the more I walked from room to room, the more I realized there wasn't a single sign of life. Not a toothbrush in the bathroom. Not a hanger in the wardrobe. Not a scratch on the doors where furniture had once been dragged in. It looked like no one had stepped foot in there for a long time. But the air was too clean for that. Abandoned places collect dust, smells, cobwebs. This place felt like it had been wiped clean. Reset. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out without thinking. His name lit up my screen. The same profile picture from the app. Same casual selfie. I answered without saying anything at first. I don't even know why. I just held the phone to my ear like I had no control over my own reaction. His voice sounded the same. Calm. Soft. Like nothing was wrong. He asked if I liked the place. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The air in my throat felt locked. I looked around slowly, the phone pressed to my ear, hearing his breathing like he was standing right behind me, even though I knew I was alone. He asked again, same tone, as if he was standing there smiling, waiting for approval of something he had worked on. The way someone would ask if you liked their new decor. Except there was no decor. There was nothing. I turned toward the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there. No one was. But the light at the end of the corridor flickered faintly like something had just passed under it. I took a step back. My footsteps echoed too clearly, bouncing off bare walls. His breathing on the phone didn't match the pace of the silence in the room. It sounded too close, like he wasn't somewhere else talking through a device, like he was simply speaking into the same air I was breathing. I lowered the phone slowly and ended the call without replying. The screen still showed the faded Tinder logo next to his name. I walked backwards toward the door, not turning my back on the corridor. Every step I took felt like I was walking through a space that had been emptied on purpose, like it had been cleaned for me, prepared. The front door was still ajar. I pushed it open more than needed just to make sure nothing was behind it. I stepped into the stairwell, heart pounding now, but everything outside the flat looked completely normal. A plant in someone else's doorway. Faint sound of a TV coming from another floor. Distant traffic noise. All of it made the emptiness behind me feel like a sealed pocket separate from the world. I went down the stairs quickly but quietly. I didn't want to run, because running would feel like acknowledging something had chased me. When I reached the outside, I kept walking all the way to the opposite pavement before turning back to look up at the building. A light flicked on in the top window of the flat I had just been in. It wasn't on before. It stayed on, steady this time, as if someone had just walked back into a room I knew was empty. I've unmatched people for stupid reasons before, like slow replies or weird emojis, but this one felt different. I unmatched her because something about that night didn't feel real, like I'd stepped into the wrong version of something that was supposed to be normal. Her profile was basic when I first saw it. 6 photos. All of them had that washed-out lighting like they were taken near a window on a cloudy day. In every photo, she was looking slightly off-camera, like someone had called her name mid-shot. Same neutral expression. Same tilted head. Bio was short, just a single line about liking quiet people. She suggested meeting at a small arcade bar on a quieter street. I wasn't against it. It sounded relaxed, not too serious. I got there first. She arrived a few minutes later, wearing the exact outfit from one of her photos, down to the same necklace and the same hairstyle. I thought it was just her favorite picture, and she dressed like it often. But when she sat across from me, I realized it looked identical. Same strand of hair out of place. Same wrinkle in the sleeve, like she had stepped out of the screen. She barely spoke at first. She just watched everything around us like she was studying how people are supposed to act on dates. Whenever I laughed or reacted, she copied it a split second too late. Not exaggerated, just slightly delayed. Like she waited to see my reaction first before deciding hers. At one point, I looked down at my drink and caught a glimpse of her in a reflection of the glass surface. She wasn't smiling like she was in front of me. Her face in the reflection was blank, expressionless, eyes focused on me too intensely. When I looked up at her directly, she smiled again like nothing was wrong. Something in me started getting uneasy. Every time I looked at her straight on, she looked almost normal. But if I caught her in a reflection, or when she thought I wasn't paying attention, her face looked different. Not physically, just empty. Like she was waiting for me to look at her again, so she could put the expression back on. I made an excuse to leave early. She didn't argue. She just tilted her head the same way she did in her photos, and watched me walk away without moving. I checked behind me once. She was still sitting there in the exact same position, hands placed perfectly on the table, head tilted, eyes locked on me. I unmatched her that night without thinking twice. I figured if I removed the profile, the weird feeling would fade. It didn't. I thought about her more than I should have. Not because I liked her, but because I couldn't figure out what felt wrong. Her face kept replaying in my head, not her actual face, but her face in the reflection, where her eyes didn't match her expression. A week passed. I was back to scrolling, half distracted. Then I saw her again. Same profile. Same layout. Same bio. Same photos in the exact same order. Except something was wrong with the photos this time. In every single one, she was no longer looking away like before. Her head was still tilted, but her eyes were now looking directly into the camera. Straight on. It wasn't a new pose. It was the exact same images, but edited in a way that didn't look like editing. Her eyes had just moved. I stared at the first photo for a long time. It felt like she was watching me through the screen. Her head was still angled slightly to the side, but her eyes tracked forward like they had been waiting to make direct contact. I swiped to the next photo. Same thing. Eyes now facing forward. Slight smile that wasn't there before. It was like she had adjusted her face for another take, except nothing else in the image had changed. Same background. Same lighting. Same loose strand of hair. I checked my block list just to make sure I hadn't made a mistake. Her old profile was gone. The app treated this one like an entirely new account. But the pictures, they weren't new. They were just corrected. Like she was fixing her mistake of not looking at me the first time. I stared at her profile picture for too long. My screen dimmed, and I tapped it back on quickly, weirdly afraid of losing eye contact. That thought hit me too hard. Eye contact. That's what it felt like. Like she had been waiting for me to notice her looking properly this time. My heart started thudding in that off rhythm that happens when your body realizes something before your brain does. I scrolled down. Her bio had changed too. It still said she liked quiet people, but now there was an extra word. This time it said, I like quiet people who look back. My thumb froze on the screen. I didn't tap anything. I didn't swipe left or right. I just stared at that line. Then, without pressing anything, the profile refreshed on its own. Her last picture slid back into place like it had reloaded. In the updated version of that last photo, her head wasn't tilted anymore. She was sitting upright, facing the camera fully. Her eyes were wide open now, not smiling. There was no background blur anymore, just her face filling the frame. My screen brightness flickered like my phone was adjusting to lighting, but I wasn't in a different light. I was in the same room. Everything around me was the same. It was just the photo reacting on its own. I didn't swipe away. I couldn't. I just watched as her eyes locked forward, unblinking. She wasn't trying to look like someone waiting to be chosen anymore. She looked like someone who had already made a choice. I didn't plan on making it a double date. That was his idea. He said it would be more relaxed, less pressure, that his friend was bringing someone too, so it wouldn't feel like a typical one-on-one. I wasn't against it. I thought it might actually make things less awkward. Group settings help when you don't fully know someone yet. That's what I told myself. He chose a dim, trendy restaurant with brick walls and flickering candles that made everything look warmer than it actually was. I got there first and stood by the entrance pretending to scroll through my phone, while secretly checking every face that walked in. He arrived with someone next to him, his friend. They both had that easygoing confidence that made people assume they were harmless. They greeted me like they'd known me already. He said his friend's date was running a little late. We sat and ordered drinks while waiting. Everything felt normal. Light conversation. Surface-level jokes. No red flags. Then, about 10 minutes in, someone approached the table. The girl who sat down next to his friend looked familiar in a way that didn't make sense at first. She didn't look like someone I had met before. She looked like someone I had seen before. It took a couple of seconds for my brain to actually place it. And it wasn't until she pushed her hair behind her ear and tilted her head slightly that it clicked in a way that made my stomach sink. She was me. Not exactly me, but her face. It was my profile picture. The one I had on Tinder. Same angle. Same lighting. Same hair falling over one side of my face. Except it wasn't a picture. It was a real girl, sitting right there, smiling politely like she had been invited normally. I stared at her in silence, waiting for someone to say it was a joke, waiting for her to recognize me and laugh about some weird coincidence. But she didn't flinch. She didn't even glance at me twice. It was like she had been taught how to hold that exact expression from my photo, and was maintaining it perfectly. Her face looked just slightly off, like someone had remade me from memory, but missed a few human details. Her eyes were too calm. Her posture too controlled. I glanced at him, waiting for his reaction. He didn't look confused. He wasn't surprised at how she looked. If anything, he looked pleased, like everything was happening how he wanted. When our eyes met, he didn't smile in a comforting way. He just watched me carefully, like he was waiting to see when I would notice. The food arrived, but I barely tasted anything. I spent the entire time watching her. Every time she moved, it was like she was trying to mimic how I would move. When I picked up my drink, she picked up hers. When I tilted my head, she did the same. Subtle. Not obvious enough for anyone else to call out, but enough for me to feel it crawling up my spine. Then his friend leaned in and mentioned how lucky they were to both match with such similar types. That phrasing made something drop in my chest. Both. Match. With similar types. I looked at him slowly. He didn't look guilty. He looked entertained. He was watching two versions of the same girl at one table and waiting for one of us to notice the other wasn't original. I excused myself to go to the bathroom to breathe away from the candlelight and their eyes. I stood in front of the mirror trying to steady my breathing. Then it hit me like a delayed realization. If her pictures matched mine, did that mean she had a profile too? I pulled out my phone and opened the app with shaking fingers. I swiped to search manually through nearby profiles. It took a minute before I found it. A profile with a different name, but my face in every picture. Not copies of my photos. Recreated versions. Same poses, same clothes, but the background was different. Like someone had remade my pictures somewhere else. In some of them, the lighting was darker, like they had been taken in a place with no windows. In one, she was smiling slightly wider than I ever did in the original. It looked unnatural, like a stretched version of my expression. My own bio was copied too, except a few words were changed. Hers said something different at the end. Where mine ended with a simple emoji, hers ended with a line I never wrote. It said, "It's nice to be chosen twice." I locked my phone hard enough that the noise echoed in the bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror and noticed something that made me freeze. My reflection wasn't matching my expression properly. For a split second, it lagged behind me, then snapped back into place. I walked back to the table slowly, my heart burning like I had swallowed fire. As I approached, I saw them sitting exactly how I left them. Him watching me. Her watching him. His friend casually talking like nothing was wrong. But the moment I stepped back into my seat, she turned her head toward me with that same slight tilt I knew too well because it was supposed to belong to me. And she smiled first. Not at the guy next to her. At me. Like she was acknowledging something silently. Like one of us wasn't needed here anymore. I didn't wait for dessert. I stood up, said I had to go, and walked out without looking back. As I reached the doorway, I glanced at my phone just to check if my profile was still active. It was gone. Only hers remained. I didn't even plan to go out that night. I matched with her while sitting on my bed bored out of my mind, tapping through profiles without even looking properly. Her bio was nothing special, but her messages were different. She replied instantly like she was already waiting on the app. It felt like she had been expecting me. She mentioned a bar downtown that she liked. Small, quiet, tucked between two old bookshops. I'd never heard of it, but she described it in such a familiar way that I didn't question it. I got there around 9. The street felt different from the rest of the city. Darker, but not in a threatening way. Just older. Like it hadn't been updated with the rest of the area. The bar she mentioned sat between a boarded-up shop and a tiny antiques place. Its sign had warm gold letters and a dull light above the door. I remember thinking it looked cozy in a strange, outdated way, like somewhere people would have gone in the 80s. Inside, the place felt tucked away from reality. No loud music, no crowds. Just a low hum of conversation and a dim yellow light across every table. People were there, but no one paid attention to anything outside their own space. She sat at a booth already, waiting with a drink in her hand like she had been there for a while. I don't remember her walking in or taking a coat off or anything. She was just there. She smiled like we had met before. The conversation flowed easily. Too easily. I don't even remember what we talked about. It felt like my brain only kept the parts where I was looking at her face and everything else just blurred out. I do remember noticing that the bartender never turned around completely. He stayed half facing the shelves like he was pretending to work while listening. At one point, the lights flickered slightly. Not like a powered issue, more like the room blinked. She didn't react. No one did. The moment passed and the bar felt even quieter after that. Time moved weirdly. I checked my phone once, expecting it to be around 11. It was nearly 1 in the morning. I had no memory of that time passing. The drink in my hand wasn't empty, but I couldn't remember sipping it more than once. Eventually, she said she had to go. Not with words. She just stood up and gave a small nod toward the door, like she was heading out and assumed I wouldn't follow. The bartender glanced up briefly as she walked past him. He didn't acknowledge her. He acknowledged me. Just a subtle stare that lasted 1 second too long. I left shortly after. Outside, the air felt colder than before. The lights on the sign above the door flickered gently like they were fading. I didn't look back for long. Just enough to see the door slowly close behind me on its own. The next morning, I felt this weird pull to go back. Not to see her, just to see the place again. It felt like if I didn't go soon, it would disappear. I couldn't explain it, but it sat heavy in my chest until I got dressed and headed downtown again. The street looked different in daylight. Cleaner. Newer. The boarded-up shop I saw last night had fresh paint and a "To Let" sign. The antiques place had a modern logo and bright window displays. I walked to where the bar should have been. Between the two, there was nothing there. Just a wall. A completely flat wall, newly painted with no door, no sign, no light fixture. Like nothing had ever been there. I traced my hand along the brick trying to find the outline of something that had been sealed. There was no seam. No patched-up frame. Just smooth surface. I started asking people walking by if there was a bar here before. A few gave me weird looks. One older guy paused and said there used to be something there years ago, but it shut down after an incident. He didn't give details, just said it had been gone a long time. He said the building had been sealed up for at least a decade. I laughed at him first, thinking he was being dramatic. Then he said they bricked it over because people kept trying to get inside thinking it was still open. He said the people who went looking always said the same thing, that they had been there recently. I walked away pretending it didn't get to me, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The warmth inside. The way it felt lived in, even though it looked older than anything around it. The drinks. The faces. Her. I pulled up the Tinder chat. Our messages were gone. Not just unmatched, gone completely. No trace she ever existed. I checked my call log. I checked my Maps history. Nothing. No bar listed. No address saved. My phone had no record of me being there. I stood across the street looking at that blank wall until the light started to fade again. The evening glow made the wall look different from a certain angle. Like if I squinted, I could almost make out a faint gold outline where a sign once hung. The longer I stared, the more it looked like light soaking into letters that weren't there anymore. I walked closer without thinking. The wall looked like it was breathing in the fading light, swallowing it. For a moment, I swore I heard the low hum of conversation from the night before. That soft, muted sound of a room full of people who don't look up when someone walks in. I blinked, and it was silent again. The next night, I went back, just to check. The wall looked darker this time. Like something behind it was waiting for someone to knock. I matched with her because her profile stood out without even trying. No filters, no heavy edits, just straight-faced photos. Every single one. Different outfits, different places, but always that same blank expression. Not annoyed, not sad, just unreadable. Something about that made her look honest in a weird way. Everyone else tries too hard. She didn't. Her messages were calm. Short replies but thoughtful. Never rushed. She gave off this quiet energy that felt different from the usual swipe and forget people. When she suggested meeting at a small diner near the edge of town, I said yes without thinking too much about it. I got there first and sat in a booth near the window. When she walked in, I recognized her instantly. Same hair, same coat from one of her photos. Except the moment she saw me, she smiled. Wide. Too wide. It threw me off more than it should have. I had gotten so used to her expressionless pictures that seeing her grin, like that, felt like I was meeting a completely different person. I waited for it to drop, expecting her to go back to that neutral look. She didn't. She sat down and just kept smiling. Through every sentence, every pause. Even when she wasn't speaking or listening, her face stayed fixed in that stretched expression. Her eyes didn't match it either. They stayed flat, like the photos, but her mouth stayed pulled back unnaturally far, showing too many teeth. At first, I tried to ignore it. People get awkward on dates. Maybe this was her nervous habit. But as the evening went on, it didn't change. She laughed at random moments even when nothing funny was said. The laugh never reached her eyes. It sounded forced but steady, like she'd practiced how to do it. At one point, I dropped my fork by accident. When I bent to pick it up, I caught a glimpse of her in a reflection of the metal napkin holder. In the reflection, she wasn't smiling. Her mouth was relaxed, neutral, just like in her pictures. But when I looked up at her directly again, the grin was back, stretched even wider than before. A strange pressure settled in my chest, a mix of confusion and something darker that I couldn't name properly. I forced conversation, trying to act normal. The more I spoke, the more she watched me with that same frozen grin. Her head tilted occasionally, but the smile never twitched. It stayed perfect. Too perfect. When the date ended, she stood up and walked away still smiling. Didn't blink much. Didn't adjust her expression once. Even as she disappeared down the street, her face stayed stuck like that, glowing faintly in the yellow streetlight. At home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something in me wanted to go back to her Tinder profile just to remind myself what she looked like without that smile. I opened it. Same photos as before. Straight-faced. Neutral. I almost felt relief seeing them. Then I thought about checking her socials. Curiosity, nothing more. Her Instagram was linked. I tapped it. The first thing I noticed was that her newest photos weren't the same anymore. Every single one had her smiling. Not just smiling. The exact same grin from the diner. Same teeth showing. Same stretched cheeks. Copy-pasted across different days. That alone made me feel uneasy, but I kept scrolling. I reached older posts. Pictures that were clearly taken years ago. Birthday photos, random mirror shots, school uniforms, old holiday pictures. I clicked one I remembered seeing earlier when I first looked her up. Back then, she wasn't smiling. In that older version, she had the same blank expression as her Tinder pictures. Now, in this version, she was smiling. Not just slightly. The same stretched grin she had at dinner. Perfectly aligned. Her head was in the same position, but her mouth had been altered. Even the shadows around her lips looked warped slightly, like they had been pulled by something invisible. I scrolled faster. Every photo I checked had changed. Old ones where she was serious were now edited to show that same grin. Even blurry group pictures, everyone else looked normal, but her head would be slightly turned toward the camera, smiling too widely. I checked the comments. They were the same as before. Nobody mentioned the smile. Nobody noticed anything different. It was like I was the only one seeing it. Then I clicked an older post someone else had tagged her in. A random candid shot of a school hallway. She was in the background, head down, walking. I remembered noticing that one before because she blended into the crowd so naturally. I opened it. My heart dropped. Everyone else's face was natural, caught mid-movement. Hers was turned toward the camera, even though in the original she had been facing the other direction, and the same grin stared out at me. Glued on. Too bright. Too focused. I went back to her profile picture. It had changed too. It used to be her looking away slightly. Now, she was staring straight into the camera. That smile stretched across her face like it had always been there. As I watched, the image slightly glitched for a fraction of a second. Her mouth twitched wider. Her eyes narrowed like she had just made eye contact with me through the screen. I blinked hard. The picture returned to normal. Well, not normal. Normal would have been no smile at all. I didn't even think I posted that much. I'm not one of those people who broadcasts every minute of their life. I take photos sometimes, save them to my gallery, maybe send them to one friend, but I don't go announcing where I am all the time. That's why I didn't notice it straight away. I met him after a normal Tinder match. He seemed casual, normal, almost bland in a safe way. Our first date was simple. Coffee, a short walk near the park, nothing intense. He didn't try anything weird. He didn't ask personal questions. He just listened more than he talked. At the end, he jokingly asked to see my phone because he said he wanted to add himself to my contacts properly instead of just being random Tinder guy. I let him. He typed something in, handed it back, and that was that. The next day, I posted a story to my private close friends list. Not public. Just a quick snap of a drink at a cafe. Only 5 people were on that list. Within seconds, I got a message from him. Nice place. My heart skipped at the coincidence. I assumed maybe one of my friends had shown him. Maybe he was joking. I replied asking how he saw it. He just sent a laughing emoji. I brushed it off. Maybe I accidentally added him to the close list. I checked. His name wasn't there. Later that night, I posted my location to a group chat by mistake, intending to send it only to one person. Before anyone else could react, he messaged, "Still there?" That time, I felt something slow and cold settle under my skin. I opened the chat I had with him. I hadn't told him I was out. He hadn't been in that group. I asked him directly how he saw it. He didn't answer the question. He just said enjoy it while you're still out. I put my phone down and tried to ignore it. Maybe it was some glitch. Maybe he followed someone else who reposted it. I kept feeding myself explanations like that just to keep the unease from sliding into panic. Then I started noticing a pattern. Every time I took a photo on my phone, not posted, just taken, I would get a reaction from him. Sometimes it would be a small comment like cute spot. Sometimes just a single word, close. The worst was when I took a photo of my own shoes just messing around, and he replied immediately with, "Behind you looks quiet." I froze when that one came through. The photo didn't show anything except my feet on the pavement. The angle didn't reveal anything behind me. I turned in a slow circle, even though I knew logically he wouldn't just be standing there. The street was busy. Crowds passing. No red flags. Yet I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with being watched physically. It felt like someone was plugged into my phone directly, like there was no barrier anymore between what I saw and what he saw. I stopped posting anything after that. I even turned off my data, thinking that would cut off whatever connection was feeding him everything. My phone felt heavier every time I held it, like it wasn't mine anymore. That night, I sat at my bed in the dark, scrolling through my camera roll trying to figure out which photos he might have seen. As I swiped, the screen lagged slightly. I thought my phone was just slow. Then a text came through. Nice gallery. My phone was in airplane mode. I stared at the message, stomach twisting. I went to settings. Airplane mode was still on. No Wi-Fi. No data. No Bluetooth. No connection. Yet he was still sending things in real time, reacting not just to what I posted, but to what I scrolled through. That's when it hit me like a delayed realization. When he asked to add himself to my contacts on the first date, he had held my phone for longer than necessary. He had typed something, pretended to laugh at his own contact name, and handed it back. He didn't add his name. He duplicated something. My SIM. My phone number wasn't the only thing tied to me. My messages, my photos, my location, all of it was being mirrored because he had cloned my SIM card in those few seconds. He had made a copy of my entire connection to the world. Not hacking my accounts, taking a duplicate of me. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Still scrolling. I dropped it like it burnt me. I didn't pick it back up. I sat there staring at it glowing on the floor, vibrating on and off every few seconds like it was breathing. I didn't need to check to know more messages were coming through. He was watching me hesitate, probably amused. The worst part wasn't even that he could see me. It was that the phone felt like it wanted me to pick it back up. Like a trap waiting for me to touch it again, so it could pulse more of his presence through the screen. I didn't switch it off. I didn't even dare hold the power button. I just left the room and closed the door behind me slowly. Through the wood, I could still hear the faint vibration every few seconds. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Like a heartbeat. His, not mine. I matched with her because her bio was weirdly confident. Not in a cringe way, just blunt. She said she was a dating coach who studied people's behavior. I thought it was some joke or some ironic attempt to stand out. When we messaged, she spoke like she was interviewing me, but making it sound casual. Asking things like what makes you stay on a date or what makes someone instantly uninteresting. I answered without thinking too deeply about it. It felt like those late-night random conversations strangers have when they don't expect to meet. She picked the place. A quiet little cafe on the corner of a back street. One of those places that felt too empty for how nice it looked. Like it existed specifically for private conversations. When I got there, she was already seated at a table near the window. She had a notebook next to her coffee. I thought it was odd, but assumed she had been working before I arrived. She smiled when she saw me, a rehearsed kind of smile, controlled and smooth like she was used to putting it on. She didn't flirt. She didn't do any of the usual first date things. She just asked questions. Everything I said, she listened to a little too deeply, like she was storing it instead of reacting to it. At some point, she mentioned casually that she sometimes films dates for research. She said it slowly, watching my reaction. I laughed like it was a joke. She didn't laugh back. She just said I shouldn't worry, that I'd passed most of the tests already. I brushed it off. People who give themselves self-made titles like dating coach usually just mean they overthink everything. That's what I told myself. The date went on. She guided the whole thing like she was following steps. When I tried asking her personal stuff, she dodged them smoothly and redirected back to me without making it obvious. I kept getting the feeling I was part of something scripted. Not in a paranormal way, in a planned way. Like she had done this many times before and always in the same pattern. When we left, she thanked me like someone finishing an interview. It didn't even feel like a date by that point. More like I had just unknowingly auditioned for something. Months passed, and I forgot about it. Moved on, talked to other people, deleted and reinstalled the app like everyone does on repeat. I didn't think about her again until a random night scrolling through YouTube when a video title caught my attention. It was called Guy Panics When Asked Day-ass Question on First Date. Must Watch. The thumbnail looked like a still image of me. I clicked it, thinking maybe it was a coincidence. The video started with soft background music and text on the screen that said, Live Analysis, Subject Number 214. The camera angle was from slightly above, like from a high shelf or ceiling corner. It was me. Sitting at that same cafe table. The quality was too good to be a phone recording. It looked professionally set up. Her voice played over it in a calm narration. She was talking about my body language like I wasn't a real person, just footage to dissect. She paused the video at random points, drawing circles on the screen, zooming into my hands, the way I moved my cup, the way I adjusted my posture. She said things like, "Here, he tries to gain control of the conversation, but doesn't realize I've already redirected him." The way she said I. Not we. Not he. I. I clicked on the channel name. There were hundreds of videos, all with different men. Some blurred, some fully visible. Titles like, "He thinks she likes him," "Watch his reaction," and subject number 153 fails instantly. I scrolled and scrolled. She uploaded almost weekly. Every thumbnail had that same cozy cafe background. Different guys. Same seat. Same angle. Same smooth voice analyzing them like lab footage. I kept scrolling until I found my face again. Not just once. Multiple times. She had split my date into segments. Hour-long breakdowns, short clips of isolated reactions, even a slow-motion zoom of me picking up my coffee, while her voice talked about what that meant psychologically. The comments section made it worse. Thousands of people commenting about me like I was some stranger online. Some mocking. Some calling me subject number 214. Some saying they recognized the pattern in other dates. Some asking her for a follow-up with the same guy. Then I noticed something even worse. In one of the playlists, titled Extended Cuts, there were longer versions of our date. Raw footage. Multiple camera angles. I saw her notebook on the table in the video, and I noticed a tiny black dot hidden in the metal binding. A lens. I scrubbed through the footage and saw small glints in the salt shaker, the hanging lights, the corner of the window frame. Every inch of that place had been wired. It wasn't a cafe people happened to go to. It was a set. I scrolled further down. The oldest videos went back years. Different hair, different outfits on her, but always the same grin, same calm narration. She had been doing this for a long time. Studying people like insects pinned to a board. The last video in the list was uploaded an hour ago. The title made my stomach drop. It said, "Subject number 214 finds the channel." The thumbnail was a still frame of me sitting at my desk, looking at my screen. My window in the corner of the room reflected in my monitor. The video had 0 views, except for mine. I only matched with him because his profile looked chill. Not overproduced, not trying too hard. Just a couple of photos in a studio, some cables, monitors, that sort of thing. His bio said he was a music producer specializing in vocals. Normally I'd roll my eyes at that, but he wasn't posing with flashy gear or pretending to be famous. He just looked normal. He sent voice notes instead of texts. That made him seem more real somehow. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that makes people trust you without realizing. He talked about sound, how every voice is unique, how he loves capturing raw tone. He said most people don't know how their own voice truly sounds until someone records it properly. The way he said that made it sound like a promise. He invited me to his place to show me his setup. I hesitated at first, but he wasn't pushy. He just said whenever I wanted to see how real vocals are processed, I was welcome. No desperate energy. No pressure. Just quiet confidence. I told myself it was fine. Just a studio demo. Something harmless. His place looked normal from the outside. Kind of bland. The inside too. Plain living room, basic furniture, a desk with a couple of monitors. Nothing outrageous. He said the real setup was downstairs. He opened a door near the back of the room that I hadn't even noticed before. The stairs were carpeted and clean. No creepy vibes. Just a normal basement, or so I thought. He walked ahead of me, talking about acoustics and isolation. His voice echoed slightly as we went down, like the air got heavier below ground. When we reached the bottom, I expected some cluttered recording space with cables everywhere. Instead, the room was spotless. Too spotless. The walls weren't plastered with posters or foam panels like most studios. They were lined with hooks. And hanging on each hook, a pair of headphones and a microphone. Every set looked carefully placed like they belonged in a display. Each headphone had a small metal tag attached to the top. At first, I thought they were brand labels. I stepped closer and realized they were engraved names. Each one different. All female names. Some with first and last. Some just first names. Neatly written, identical engraving style like they were all commissioned together. He walked to a shelf calmly, like this wasn't strange at all. He talked about how every voice deserves its own channel, its own space. He said each mic was tuned for someone specific, and that he never overwrites a voice once it's captured. He ran his fingers along one of the tagged sets gently, almost respectfully. I scanned the names without meaning to. Some were common, some unusual, some sounded young. The tags looked polished like they were recently wiped. The number of them went around the entire room. Dozens. More than dozens. It felt like too many for one person to have worked with, especially someone who wasn't even famous. On one side of the room, a long desk held a single recording mic already set up with a chair facing it. The mic had no tag on it. Empty hook above it. Waiting. He noticed where I was looking and smiled. He said he'd been waiting to find the right voice to fill that slot. He said it casually, but I felt something cold under his tone. He gestured toward the chair like it was perfectly normal to ask a Tinder match to sit and record something in a room full of named equipment. I didn't sit. He didn't push. He just stood there, watching me take in the room. The silence pressed in from the padded ceiling. Too thick, too still. No outside sounds. No hum from upstairs. Just the quiet breath of a space designed to trap sound and never let it escape. My gaze caught on something else. A small box on the far wall near the floor. It had a glass front, like a display case. Inside it was a coil of SIM cards, lanyards with faded badges, and what looked like old foam cases, each labeled with the same names as the headphones. I took a small step back. He didn't move. He just tilted his head slightly and said something about how once a voice is archived, it stays here forever, set in its channel with its own mic, its own nameplate. He said it like he was talking about preserving art pieces, not people. My throat tightened. I mumbled something about needing water or air. I don't even remember what reason I made up. I walked backward toward the stairs, not turning my back, not taking my eyes off the rows of names. He let me go. He didn't chase. He didn't call after me. That made it worse. As I reached the top of the stairs, he said, in the same calm tone as everything else, that he was glad I came. He said not everyone gets to see the archive before their name goes on the wall. I didn't reply. I just pushed out the front door and walked fast until I was off his street. I didn't run. Running felt like it would trigger something. When I got home, I opened Tinder to block him. His profile was gone. Not unmatched. Not deleted. Just gone like it had never existed. I scrolled through my contacts. My own name felt unfamiliar suddenly. Like one day it might end up on a tag, hanging next to a pair of headphones I'd never want to wear. I didn't think anything was off about her place at first. It looked like a normal flat, small but tidy, a few plants, one lamp that gave the whole room that fake cozy glow. Everything about her felt easy to be around. No weird energy, no strange habits. She laughed at the right moments, asked normal questions, even had the same dumb taste in films as me. It felt like one of the more normal matches I'd had in a while. After a few dates, staying over seemed like the natural next step. We watched some random show neither of us was really paying attention to, dozed off on the sofa, and eventually ended up in her bed. I fell asleep fast. The kind of deep sleep where your brain switches off completely and everything feels heavy and quiet. At some point in the night, I started waking up without knowing why. Not fully, more like floating near consciousness. I felt a light on my face before I'd opened my eyes. A cold white light. My brain tried to convince me it was morning, that it was sunlight leaking through curtains, but it didn't feel like sunlight. It felt too focused, like a torch aimed straight at me. I opened my eyes slowly, just enough to see without letting on that I was awake. She was standing over me. Phone flashlight pointed directly at my face. In her other hand, my phone. The screen was open. Tinder was on it. She had my thumb pressed against the unlock sensor. She wasn't scrolling through her matches. She was using my thumbprint to swipe. Her face was blank. No expression. Eyes locked on my screen, not on me. The light from her phone made her features look sharp and hollow. Every time she dragged her finger across my screen to swipe, my locked thumb stayed against the sensor like a dead weight, like I was a part of the action even though I was frozen. I stayed still, completely still. She kept going, methodically. Swipe right. Pause. Swipe left. Tap. Open profile. Zoom in. Swipe again. The way she scrolled felt rehearsed, like she had done this before. Like she knew exactly how much pressure she needed to keep my thumb in place without waking me. Every once in a while, she'd press my thumb harder on the sensor to confirm something inside the app. Like she was matching people, or messaging them. I watched the light flicker across her face. There was no excitement there. No curiosity. Just focus. Cold and steady. I wanted to snatch my phone back. I wanted to say something. But something about the way she moved made my body lock up. The slow, careful movements. The controlled breathing. Like she wasn't improvising. Like this was part of a plan she had set in motion hours before I even fell asleep. She scrolled to the messages section. I watched my own chats open. Threads I hadn't touched in weeks. She scrolled through them slowly, pausing on certain names. When she stopped on one, I saw her tap into the message field. She pressed my thumb down again. Message sent. I didn't see what she wrote. I just heard the whoosh sound of it sending into the dark. That sound did more to wake me than anything else. My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my jaw. She looked at the message for a second, then slowly backed up, taking the phone and flashlight with her. She walked to the corner of the room and stood there, still facing the screen, reading through my matches like she was sorting something. Her shadow stretched across the wall behind her, warped by the flashlight beam. She didn't breathe like someone casually scrolling. She breathed slow, controlled, like she was pacing her heartbeat. I waited until her attention was fully on the phone before I moved. I shifted one finger slowly to see if she'd react. She didn't. I adjusted my breathing. Made it sound heavy, like I was still asleep. I closed my eyes almost completely, but kept a thin line open just enough to track her. She stayed in that corner for what felt like hours. Scrolling. Matching. Messaging. Using my thumb to access anything she couldn't get into otherwise. Then she stopped. She turned off the flashlight. The room went dark, but I could still see the faint glow from my screen lighting her face from below. She lifted her head slowly, like she could sense I was watching even with my eyes nearly shut. For a moment, she just stood there. Then she placed my phone on the bedside table, face down. She sat on the edge of the bed with her back to me, and stayed perfectly still, waiting, like she was giving me a chance to react. I kept my breathing steady, pretended to shift slightly in my sleep like someone turning over. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, upright, patient. I waited until the sun started bleeding through the curtains before I moved again. She was lying beside me by then, eyes closed, breathing softly like she'd been asleep the whole time. My phone was still on the table. It was still face down. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look at it. I got dressed quietly and left. She didn't wake up. Or maybe she did, and just didn't let me know. When I got outside, I finally picked up my phone and turned it over. Tinder was still open. The last message, sent from my account, just said, "I'm free tonight too. Let's meet at your place." I've always had this bad habit of tossing my phone onto whatever surface is closest when I get comfortable. Couch arm, random shelf, kitchen counter, it doesn't matter. I never think twice about it. So when I left his place after a casual Tinder date, I didn't even realize I'd forgotten my phone there until I got home and reached into my pocket out of reflex. Empty. My stomach dropped a little, but I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I'd just go back and grab it. Simple. I messaged him from my laptop, asking if it was still there. He responded quickly, said yeah. It was on his coffee table. He sounded chill about it. He even said I could swing by whenever because he'd be home all night. I hesitated for a minute before heading back. We'd only gone out once. He seemed normal, funny, kind of quiet. But still, something about going back so soon felt strange. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just a phone. The walk felt longer this time, even though it was the same route. Maybe it was the cold, or the way the streets seemed emptier. When I reached his building, the hallway light was flickering. His door was already unlocked. He called out from the kitchen that my phone was on the table. I stepped inside. The place felt different, colder, quieter. The blinds were closed this time. The phone sat neatly in the center of the coffee table, perfectly parallel to the table's edge, like it had been positioned that way on purpose. The screen was black. No notifications. I picked it up and pressed the side button. Instead of my lock screen, I saw the setup screen. The one you get when you first buy a new device. White background. Hello in different languages. My chest tightened. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual. "Was it like this when you found it?" No response. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of water running from the kitchen sink. I took a small step toward the kitchen doorway, but something in me didn't want to walk over there. The air felt too still, too heavy. I held down the power button, hoping it was some weird glitch. The screen flickered faintly, like it wanted to show something else, just for a heartbeat, but then it went right back to the hello. That's when I noticed something else. There was no smell. Earlier that evening, when we'd hung out, his place had smelled like takeout and cologne. Now it smelled like nothing. Like an empty room that hadn't been lived in for a while. "I'm just gonna grab this and head out," I said. My voice sounded small. Still nothing. I backed toward the door without taking my eyes off the kitchen. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even look back when I left. The air outside felt sharper real again, like I'd stepped out of a place I wasn't supposed to be. When I got home, I plugged the phone into my charger just in case it was dead or glitching. It booted up again. Same setup screen. No sign of my wallpaper, no traces of my apps, nothing. Just that blank, too clean white. I sat there staring at it for a while, like if I waited long enough, my old home screen would blink through, my photo, my messages, everything. But it didn't. I didn't set it up. I left it face down on my desk and opened my laptop instead. I logged into Tinder using the web version just to see if my account was still active. It loaded normally. My profile was there, same pictures, same bio, same matches. Nothing had changed. I exhaled and closed the tab. I was about to shut the laptop when I heard the notification ping. Tinder had sent a new message alert. Someone had messaged someone from my account. I hadn't touched anything. I opened it. My account had sent a message to one of my friends. Someone I actually knew in real life. I hadn't matched with them before. The message said, "Do you want to meet too?" My chest constricted. I clicked into my messages. My account had started several new chats, all with people I knew, coworkers, classmates, even my roommate. Some weren't even on my matches list. It was messaging numbers from my contacts somehow, inviting them out like I had written it myself. I tried to log out. The screen froze for a moment. Then the chat window opened by itself. The scroll bar moved on its own, flicking through messages at random. My profile was typing again. My name, my photo, my tone. Same casual style. Same favorite emoji at the end. My hands were shaking as I yanked the laptop charger out. The screen went black. I stared at my phone on the desk, still on the setup screen. The words hello and hola cycled slowly, like it was waiting. I reached over and picked it up again. The moment my finger touched the glass, the screen glitched. For half a second, I saw my lock screen wallpaper, my real one, a photo I'd taken months ago. Then it vanished, replaced again by the setup screen. Like it still remembered everything, but it didn't want me to have it back. I grabbed my tablet, desperate to delete my Tinder account entirely. When I went to the website, the login page flickered, then opened directly into the chat window without asking for my credentials. The screen populated instantly. A new message appeared at the bottom of the conversation list from my own account. It said, "Don't worry, I'm setting things up for you." My heart dropped. I slammed the tablet shut. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. A vibration buzzed against the desk. My phone. I hadn't plugged it in. It was face down, still supposedly in setup mode, but it was vibrating, softly, rhythmically. I turned it over. The screen was black now. Then it blinked once. My wallpaper appeared, my face reflected faintly in the glass. The camera light flashed, just for a moment. Then the hello screen returned. My pulse was hammering. I grabbed the phone and shoved it into a drawer, slamming it shut. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the dark screen of my laptop, at my reflection in the glossy surface. For a long moment, nothing happened, just the hum of my apartment. Then I heard the vibration again. Another. Then another. A pattern. Slow at first, then quicker. I opened the drawer an inch. The phone screen glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. I turned off all the lights. I didn't want to see it. It kept vibrating for hours. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my laptop powering itself on. The fan spun, the screen flickered, and Tinder opened automatically. My messages loaded one by one. Dozens of new conversations. Each message was a variation of the same thing. "Can't wait to see you tonight." I reached for the power cord, ready to rip it out again, but then I saw something that made me stop. In one of the chat windows, a photo had been sent. A new one. Taken inside my apartment. The angle was low, near the desk, aimed at my bed. I looked toward the drawer. It was slightly open. The phone was gone. I only matched her because she was close. That's literally the only reason. Her profile didn't blow me away or anything. She had 3 photos, one blurry mirror selfie, one picture at a bus stop, and one of her standing somewhere that looked like an empty car park. Nothing special. Her bio just said, 5 miles away. That distance thing always shows up under people's names, so I didn't think twice. We started chatting. She typed strangely, not in a bot way, just controlled. Every sentence felt deliberate, no filler words, no emojis, no little lulls to soften anything. Just short, clean messages. She didn't waste time on introductions or small talk. The first thing she asked was, "Where do you usually hang out?" I gave a vague answer, something like around the city. Still, the air felt heavier, like the walls were pressing in a little. Another message popped up. 0.4 miles away. I stood up and went to the window, moving quietly, even though there was no reason to. I didn't open the curtain fully, just nudged it an inch to peek through. The street outside was empty. A few parked cars, one flickering streetlight, shadows stretching across the pavement. Nothing. Then my phone pinged again. 0.3 miles away. I locked it and held it in my hand. My heartbeat felt too loud in the quiet room. I pulled the curtains fully closed, like that would somehow block out the signal, like distance couldn't cross fabric. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone. People passed by all the time. Maybe she was walking home. Maybe she lived nearby. Streets overlap. GPS is messy. Another buzz. 0.1 miles away. That one made me stop breathing for a second. I could feel the blood thudding in my ears. Then came the typing bubble. The 3 dots. They blinked, disappeared, blinked again, like she was hesitating. Finally, the message appeared. I'm outside. No punctuation. No emoji. Just that. I didn't go to the window. I didn't even move. I sat there perfectly still, staring at the words. My phone screen cast a dull glow on my face, and for a second I had this stupid thought. That the light from the phone could be seen through the curtain. That she could see where in the room I was. I turned the phone face down on the bed. The world went darker. Then, faint, almost nothing, I heard it. A soft crunch. Gravel under a footstep. Slow. Not heavy. Dragging slightly. Another step. Then silence. The air in my throat turned thin. I didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm anything, but my body was tensed like I was waiting to run. The phone buzzed again. I flipped it over. Why close the curtains? My fingers froze above the screen. I didn't reply. Another message. You looked out a minute ago. That one made something drop in my stomach. It meant she'd been watching before I even checked the window. It meant she saw me. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff. The lamp on my desk felt too bright suddenly. I reached over and switched it off. The room went completely dark except for the blue glow of the phone. I wanted to call someone, but who? What would I even say? Hey, some Tinder girl might be outside my house. Another message. I can still see you. My throat went dry. I backed away from the window until I was standing in the doorway to the hall. Every creak of the floor felt too loud. I could hear my own breathing, short, uneven. The street outside was silent. No car engines, no voices, no dogs, just stillness. The phone buzzed again. 0.0 miles away. I didn't know what that meant. Then the typing bubble came up again, flickered, vanished. Came back, vanished. Then my screen flashed once, like the app glitched. It showed her profile again. Same blurry mirror selfie. Same bus stop picture. Same empty car park shot. But the text under her name had changed. It didn't say 5 miles away anymore. It didn't say 3 or 0. It just said, here. Nothing else. Just that one word. The typing bubble appeared again for a few seconds, then stopped. The silence outside didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like something waiting. I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to. He brought it up before we even met, the safe word thing. I thought he was joking. He said it so casually, like it was just another normal step in planning a date. He messaged that meeting strangers was risky, so having a safe word people could use if they felt uncomfortable was smart. I'd assumed he meant it as a joke or some awkward attempt to sound responsible, like a bad icebreaker. He said the safe word was orange. I laughed when I read it. It felt like something from a TikTok trend, one of those videos where girls prank their dates with code words. I replied something like, sure, but I'll probably never need it. He didn't react. Didn't send a laughing emoji. Didn't even say, haha. Just typed, I'm glad you understand. That should have been the first red flag. But I didn't get creeped out yet. I just figured he was one of those overly cautious types. Maybe had a bad experience before. The restaurant he suggested wasn't anything special. A small place tucked between two shops, one of those spots that looks a little too dim from the outside but cozy inside. Warm amber lights, soft hum of conversation, a smell of something buttery and sweet in the air. When I walked in, it almost felt too calm. Every table had those fake candles that flicker like they're trying too hard to be romantic. I spotted him immediately, seated in the back corner, facing the door. He smiled when I approached, polite but not wide. I remember thinking he looked exactly like his photos. Same gray sweater, same trimmed beard, same eyes that looked half focused, half somewhere else. He stood, shook my hand, not awkwardly, not overly confident either. Just neutral. Everything about him was neutral. We ordered food. Nothing fancy. Pasta, a shared bottle of wine. Around us, maybe 8 or 9 other tables were occupied. Couples, groups of friends, an older man reading a menu like he was studying for an exam. Conversation started normal enough. He asked about work, family, what I do on weekends. He listened politely, but there was something about his pauses that felt rehearsed. Every time I finished a sentence, there was this half-second where he'd look at me like he was waiting for an answer to a different question. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just shy. Halfway through the meal, he leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, and asked how I was feeling. I said fine. He nodded. Slowly. Not like he was agreeing, but assessing. His eyes flicked from mine to my hands to my drink, as though he was cataloging details. Then, without any change in tone or expression, he said, "Orange?" Just that. Calmly, like a waiter calling an order. I blinked. My brain tripped over itself trying to process it. For a second, I thought he was testing me. Maybe trying to see if I remembered the safe word joke. But he didn't smile. He didn't react at all. He just cut into his food and took another bite. And that's when I realized something was wrong. The room had gone silent. Not just quiet, silent. The kind of silence where your ears start to buzz. No clinking cutlery. No scraping chairs. No murmurs of conversation. Just absolute stillness. I turned my head slightly. Every single person in that restaurant had frozen mid-motion. The woman across from us had her fork halfway to her mouth. The waiter by the bar had stopped pouring wine, the stream hanging perfectly still mid-pour. The older man with the menu had his fingers stuck between 2 pages, unmoving. Then, one by one, they turned their heads. Not toward us. Toward me. Dozens of eyes. Expressionless. Waiting. My pulse slammed so hard in my ears it hurt. My fingers twitched on my glass, unsure whether to put it down or throw it. I looked at him. He was still chewing calmly, watching me. "This is just protocol," he said. The words didn't sound like an explanation. They sounded like a command. The people stayed still, their faces blank, their bodies slightly tense, like mannequins that had just barely been posed. I wanted to move, to stand up, but I couldn't feel my legs properly. It was like my body hadn't caught up with the situation yet. My brain was screaming, but everything outside my head felt slow. I finally pushed back my chair. The screech of wood on tile cut through the silence like a blade. Every head turned with the sound, perfectly in sync. I stood. He didn't. He kept his hands folded neatly on the table, his knife and fork perfectly aligned beside his plate. They stop when I say the word, he said softly. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want him to prove it. I took one step backward. Another. The air in the restaurant felt thick, like humidity before a storm. I could feel their eyes tracking me, moving in perfect rhythm. When I reached the door, I hesitated for half a second. Some primal instinct that told me not to turn my back completely. He spoke again, his voice lighter now, almost amused. Now everyone remembers you. The way he said it made something twist deep in my stomach. I didn't reply. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the noise of the street slammed into me. Cars, chatter, the faint blare of music from somewhere. It all hit like I'd been underwater too long and just surfaced. I turned once, just enough to glance back. Through the glass window, I could see them all still seated, still facing me, unmoving. I walked fast. Not running, but fast enough to make people on the sidewalk glance at me. My heart was hammering so violently, I could taste it. I told myself I wouldn't look back again. When I got home, I locked my door and leaned against it until my breathing slowed. Then I took out my phone. I opened Tinder. His chat was gone. Not unmatched, just gone. No name, no history, no messages, like he had never existed. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it. But when I went to my recent calls, there was a missed call from an unknown number at the exact time I'd walked out of the restaurant. No voicemail. Just the timestamp. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces, all turning at once. Days passed. I told myself it was just something strange, some elaborate prank maybe. But it didn't fade. Because now, whenever I walk through crowds, grocery stores, trains, cafes, I notice people pausing sometimes. Just for a second. Their eyes flick toward me like they're remembering something they can't quite place. And every once in a while, when someone passes me on the street, I swear I hear it under their breath. A single word. Orange. I woke up with that weird heavy feeling in my head, the kind you get after a night where you know you drank, but not enough to forget everything. Except I couldn't remember anything past sitting down at the bar with her. I was still in my clothes from the night before. My shoes were off, neatly placed by the door like someone else had taken them off for me. My jacket was folded over the chair. I don't fold my jacket. Ever. The air in the room felt used. Not dirty, not stale. Just lived in. Like I had been somewhere else all night and only my body had come back. The curtain was half open, and sunlight leaked through in thin stripes across the floor. My phone was on the bedside table face down. It shouldn't have been there. I always plug it in before bed. The screen reflected a thin patch of light, and even before I picked it up, I had that slow crawling dread in my chest, the kind that builds before you even know what you're afraid of. I grabbed it. The screen lit up. 412 new matches. I blinked, convinced it was a glitch. I don't even swipe that much. Maybe a few times when I'm bored. I definitely didn't swipe 400 times in one night. I tapped it, expecting the number to drop back down or the app to crash. It didn't. Tinder opened instantly. No loading wheel. No finding people near you. My match list stretched endlessly, a vertical blur of faces and names that loaded without pause, like they'd all been sitting there waiting. But it didn't look like Tinder anymore. Not in the interface. Everything was normal, but in the feeling of it. Something was off. The faces felt too close, like every one of them had been captured a few seconds ago. I opened the first chat. You were a great listener. That was the only message. Nothing before, nothing after. I scrolled up. No previous conversation. Just that one line. I opened another match. You were a great listener. Then another. You were a great listener. Every single one. Dozens of them. Each message arriving at different times through the night and early morning. All identical. I scrolled faster, flicking through them like a deck of cards. Different women. Bedrooms, cars, cafes, selfies. All different, all real. Every single one saying the same thing. You were a great listener. The words started blending together, a rhythm I couldn't stop reading. I checked my sent messages, but there was nothing. I hadn't replied to anyone. Or maybe I had, and something had wiped the rest of the conversation clean. I tried to remember the night. I saw flashes, her sitting across from me, the clink of glasses, her laughing about something small. Maybe about the bartender. I remembered leaning forward to hear her better because the music was loud. Then nothing. Just a blank stretch of black in my head. I scrolled faster. The timestamps started to blur together. 1:13 a.m. 1:14 a.m. 1:14 a.m. 1:14 a.m. Hundreds of messages, all sent in the same minute. My lock screen flashed. A new notification. New message, Tinder. I opened it immediately. You were a great listener. This one came from a brand new match. No photo. Just a gray silhouette. No name. A typing bubble appeared. I stared at it, my heartbeat starting to pound. Then the words came, one at a time, slow enough to make my skin crawl. Do you remember what you said? The typing bubble vanished. Before I could react, another notification slid down. Then another. You were a great listener. You were a great listener. You were a great listener. They kept coming. 20, 30, 50 of them. All at once, overlapping, the notifications stacking until they covered the screen completely. My phone stuttered. I tried to close the app, but it froze, glitched, and then jumped on its own. My match list scrolled itself to the top. A single profile was pinned there now. Not by me. Her. The girl from last night. Her profile picture was different. Not the one from before. This was a new image. A grainy photo of me. Sitting at the bar. Head down, eyes half closed. Like I was somewhere else entirely inside my own body. The chat opened automatically. Her message popped up. You really did listen. All night. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I could feel the faint throb of my pulse in my fingertips. I didn't touch the screen. Then another notification appeared. Not from Tinder. Photos added to your camera roll. My stomach turned. I opened my gallery. There were videos. Hundreds of them. Short clips, a few minutes each, all from the same bar. All of me. Each clip filmed from a different angle, some from across the room, some close enough that the lens caught the reflection of my drink in the glass. In every one, I was sitting in the same spot. Not talking, not drinking, just sitting. Listening. I tapped the first video. The sound was muffled, like it was recorded from far away. My head in the video tilted slightly, eyes fixed forward, lips moving occasionally. Halfway through, the audio shifted. Her voice. Talking. Soft, constant, like a hum that filled the whole space. Then my voice, low, almost mechanical, replying over and over. I'm listening. I'm listening. Over and over again. Calm, patient, almost kind. I didn't remember saying it. But in every clip, my mouth was moving in sync with the words. I skipped through more videos. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone steady. Every single one showed the same thing. Me, silent, still, watching. The camera moving slightly, adjusting focus, like whoever filmed it was walking in slow circles around me. And then I saw it. In the reflection behind the bar, a dark shape standing right next to me. No face, no outline clear enough to describe. Just There. I switched to another video. Same reflection. Different angle. Always closer. I played the last one. Timestamped 2:07 a.m. The video started normally, then the image wavered like static. My head turned, slowly, like I'd heard something behind me. Then, in the faint light of the bar mirror, I watched myself lift my phone, the same phone I was holding now, and aim it straight at the camera filming me. The screen in the video flashed white, and the recording cut off. My real phone buzzed in my hand. New message. Here? You're still listening, right? My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Another message came instantly. Good. Stay there. The app crashed. My home screen returned. My camera light turned on by itself, casting a thin white glow across the room. For a split second, the light flickered, not like a glitch, but like it had caught movement. A reflection in the phone screen. Something behind me. I didn't turn around. I just stared at my own face reflected in the black glass, eyes wide, breathing too fast, and watched as the camera switched from front to rear view on its own. The lens pointed straight past my shoulder into the empty room behind me. And from somewhere close, a voice whispered, not from the phone, not from outside, but from right behind my ear. You were a great listener. I told myself I wasn't going to do it again. Redownloading Tinder after a breakup always feels pathetic, like announcing to the world that you're bored and lonely enough to scroll through strangers just to feel something. But the silence in my apartment was getting to me. Too many evenings sitting on the floor, scrolling through old photos I swore I deleted. Too many nights convincing myself I didn't miss him, then checking his social media anyway. I hated that routine, the numbness that only cracked open when I gave it attention. So I reinstalled it. Fresh account. New pictures. I even changed my hair since the breakup, so it felt like a different version of me. A cleaner slate. The app loaded, cheerful and bright, pretending it wasn't built on loneliness. I filled out my bio half-heartedly, set my radius small. I wasn't ready for anyone far away, physically or emotionally. I sat on my couch, the new one I'd bought after moving out, and waited for the app to finish setting up. The first swipe popped up almost instantly, and I froze. It was him. My ex. Matched. Not waiting to be swiped on. Already a match. His face smiling like nothing ever happened. For a second, I thought my brain was playing a trick, that I'd accidentally imported an old account or photo. But no. His profile was right there, name and all, already connected to mine. He looked different. Healthier. Happier. The same half-smile he used to give me, but lighter somehow, like he was performing it for someone else, like he practiced looking fine. I almost dropped my phone. It had to be a glitch, or maybe some bot using his old pictures. Except, the background wasn't old. It wasn't familiar from our time together. It was my wall. My new wall. The off-white one in this apartment. I recognized the curtain I'd hung last week. The corner always folds slightly inward because the rod is crooked. Even the dent in the paint near the baseboard, the one I made when I accidentally swung the chair leg too hard while moving furniture. He shouldn't have that photo. He had never been here. He had never even seen this apartment. I moved after we broke up. I made sure he didn't have the new address. I hadn't told him, hadn't posted any geotagged pictures, hadn't even told mutual friends. I stared at the photo until my eyes hurt. Zoomed in until the pixels blurred. And there, behind him, was the chipped blue mug I'd bought 2 days ago. The one I hadn't even shown anyone yet. It sat on my shelf, next to the fake plant and the framed photo of my sister. He stood in front of all of it, smiling like he lived there. I checked the info on the profile. 1 mile away. My stomach twisted hard. I could hear my own breathing in the quiet room. Too loud, too close. I tapped the chat button before I could stop myself. I didn't want to talk to him. I just needed to know. Me? How did you get that photo? The message marked as read instantly. No typing bubble. Just that faint, gray word, read. Then, after a pause, his reply appeared. Him. The lighting in here makes me look better than I remember. You redecorated. My throat tightened. My vision tunneled. The lighting in here. He said it like he was in the room right now. I typed back, hands shaking. Me? How did you get in? But before I hit send, something clicked. Something subtle, terrifyingly small, the kind of realization that feels like a crack forming in the world around you. The photo. He wasn't holding the phone at arm's length. It wasn't a selfie. It had been taken from behind him. Like someone else had been in the room with him. Someone holding the camera. Someone standing where I was sitting right now. My breath caught. I stared around the room. Everything looked normal. Same shadows, same quiet hum of the fridge down the hall. But my pulse refused to slow. I checked my notifications. No missed calls, no alerts. The door was locked. The window, I turned my head toward it. Shut. But the latch. The latch was undone. My phone buzzed again. Him. You still leave the window latch unhooked. My legs went numb. Cold crept up my spine, deliberate and slow. I stared at the message until the words stopped meaning anything. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, my throat, my skull. Every part of me screamed to move, but I couldn't. Finally, I stood, too quickly. My knees almost gave out. I walked toward the window in small, uneven steps. The room felt heavier with every breath, like the air itself was holding its breath with me. The phone buzzed again. Him. Don't turn around yet. Let me get a better angle. I froze. Completely. It wasn't fear that stopped me. It was something colder. A kind of instinct that told me if I moved, if I even flinched, whatever was behind me would move faster. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. The seconds stretched thin. Then, click. A camera shutter. Soft. Close. I felt the air shift behind me, the faintest brush of movement. My eyes watered from not blinking. I couldn't tell if I was shaking or if the floor was. Another message came through. Him. Perfect. Don't move. My body screamed. My brain was noise. I turned. Too fast, too desperate, spinning around with my phone raised like a weapon. The room was empty. No one near the window. No one behind me. Just my own reflection in the black screen, trembling. I rushed to the window, slammed the latch shut so hard it rattled, checked every corner, every closet. Nothing. When I finally looked at my phone again, Tinder had closed itself. The icon on my home screen was gone. I hadn't deleted it. My heart hammered as I opened my camera app. It wouldn't open. Just a black screen for a few seconds. And then, suddenly, a single image appeared. It was me. Taken from behind. Standing at the window, just now. The timestamp was from 2 minutes ago. And behind me in the photo, half hidden in the corner of the frame, was him. Smiling. The same half smile. The same lighting. The same off-white wall. Like he'd never left. Like he'd never needed to. And underneath the photo, my phone glitched, screen flickering before a new notification slid across the top. New match. I didn't want to look. But I did. It was the same profile. Only this time, under his name, it didn't say 1 mile away. It said, here. I didn't expect much from that match. He wasn't overly chatty, didn't use any cheesy lines, didn't flood me with emojis or compliments. Just asked if I wanted to grab a drink somewhere up the high street. His profile didn't give away much either. A couple of normal photos, nothing that screamed trying too hard. No sunglasses selfies. No gym mirror poses. He looked ordinary in a comforting way. Quiet. Harmless. The kind of person you wouldn't think twice about walking past in a supermarket. I'd had worse dates, so why not? The bar he picked wasn't fancy. Just one of those dimly lit places with flickering neon signs that hummed faintly and sticky floors that still smell like spilled drinks from years ago. A place where the bartenders look like they've seen everything twice and don't care to remember any of it. I got there a few minutes early and sat at a corner table where I could see the entrance. I always do that. Habit. The table was slightly uneven, one leg propped up by a folded coaster. The music was low enough that you could hear the buzz of conversations blend together like static. He arrived right on time. That alone surprised me. Most people stroll in late, apologizing in a tone that suggests they're used to making people wait. But not him. He walked straight in, scanning the room until his eyes found mine, and smiled. It wasn't a bad smile, just rehearsed, like he'd practiced in the mirror. He looked exactly like his photos, maybe a little thinner. There was tension sitting just under his skin, a restless energy that showed in his hands. When we got drinks, he kept tapping the side of his glass with a single finger, keeping time with a rhythm only he could hear. It wasn't nervousness exactly. It was focus. I asked if everything was okay. He said, "Yeah," too quickly, like it was a reflex, like he'd said it before to stop people from asking follow-ups. We talked about the usual small things: weather, work, music, favorite places to eat. He laughed in the right spots, said all the right polite things, but his eyes never joined in. They were somewhere else, always shifting, to the door, to the mirror behind the bar, to something over my shoulder that I couldn't see. After about 20 minutes, I made an excuse about needing the bathroom just to get a moment away from that strange tension. The hallway to the bathrooms was narrow, lit by a single flickering light. On the left was a notice board covered with layers of old paper. Gay posters, lost cat flyers, ads for language tutors, everything yellowed and curling at the corners. One piece of paper stood out. White, fresh, untouched. At first, I wasn't going to look. I almost walked straight past. But something about it pulled my eyes like gravity. And when I saw it, my brain stalled. It was my face. Not someone who looked like me, my actual face. The same smile I'd used for my old profile picture, the one I'd taken in my kitchen a year ago, standing by the counter with the window light on my hair. Underneath it, in bold, black font, "Ma Saying," and below that, "Last seen, today." My full name was printed beneath. The paper was dated with today's date. I stood frozen. My mouth went dry. My skin prickled like it was trying to crawl off me. For a full 5 seconds, I didn't breathe. I just stared at the flyer, waiting for it to blur into something else. Waiting for my brain to tell me I'd misread it. But the photo didn't change. The words didn't shift. It was me. And it said I was missing. My heartbeat jumped into my throat. I ripped the flyer from the board so fast the pushpin clattered to the floor. My hands were shaking. The paper felt wrong. Too warm, like it had just come out of a printer. I looked closer. The contact number printed at the bottom wasn't one I recognized. No area code, just a long string of digits. I turned the page over, hoping there'd be some clue, an address, a name, but it was blank. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I flinched so hard I almost dropped the flyer. A Tinder notification. From him. He was sitting only a few meters away, yet he was messaging me. The preview on the screen said, "Everything okay?" My stomach lurched. He knew I'd seen it. I didn't answer. I didn't even unlock my phone. I just stared down the dim hallway, the shadows pulsing faintly with the flicker of the overhead bulb. The bar's muffled noise sounded far away, like it belonged to another world. I folded the flyer, shoved it into my pocket, and took a long breath to stop my hands from trembling. Then I walked back out toward the main room. He was watching me. His tapping had stopped. Both his hands were flat on the table now, palms pressed down like he was holding himself in place. His drink sat untouched. His face was blank. No smile, no expression, nothing human left in it. I didn't go back to the table. I couldn't. Every instinct I had screamed to leave, but I also felt watched. Not just by him, by other people too. The bar felt wrong now. The background chatter had softened, the laughter too forced, like everyone was pretending not to notice me. I turned toward the door, tried to walk casually. My pulse was hammering so loud I could feel it in my teeth. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair. He was standing up. I didn't look back. I pushed through the door, and the cold night air hit me hard enough to sting. I kept walking, not running. Running makes you look scared. Running gets attention. The streetlights buzzed faintly above, their light slicing the dark into uneven strips. My reflection kept flickering in the windows I passed. Pale, fast, unfamiliar. I took the folded flyer from my pocket. My fingers left faint smudges of sweat on the paper. It was still there. Still dated today. Still me. That's when my phone rang. Not a text. A call. The screen lit up. Unknown number. And beneath that, the number matched the one on the flyer. The one printed below missing. Last seen today. I froze mid-step. My breath came out shallow. The phone buzzed in my hand. Once. Twice. Then stopped. I exhaled shakily, and before I could think, it buzzed again. Same number. Same blank screen. This time, curiosity or fear, I don't even know which, made me bring it closer to my ear. The call connected before I touched anything. There was silence on the other end. No breathing. No static, just quiet. Then a voice, my own voice, whispered, perfectly calm. Don't go home yet. I dropped the phone. It hit the pavement with a dull clack. Somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps. Soft, careful. Matching my pace exactly. I didn't turn around. I just started walking faster, the flyer still in my other hand, fluttering slightly in the wind. When I finally passed under a streetlight, I looked down. The photo on the flyer had changed. I wasn't smiling anymore.